Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. Today we're going to be looking at another Celestial Storm deck. This time with Swampert, one of the coolest cards in the new set. Maybe not the most playable, but definitely one that has a lot of potential because it can draw a bunch of cards. And as we've seen with the Zoroark era, drawing cards is insane. So we've got to try and build around him just to make sure that he's not broken. But we're going to try our best to make him work. So as always, we're going to go through the list and the basic concepts and all that good stuff. So let's start off with that basic concept itself. And I'm actually pairing Swampert with Ninetales, and the reason why I'm doing this instead of Magcargo is because Alolan Vulpix is really, really good for evolution decks. We've seen it been played in Guardi, in even Decitails as well, of course, for that beacon, and it's going to help you get into extra Lele's, so it lets you Brigette turn one aggressively. It's also going to get you into your stage 2s themselves. So Alolan Vulpix is a great, great addition to Swampert because we really want to build around his ability, get those Swamperts online, and once you start doing that, you're going to motor through your deck very quickly. Like, you normally get close to deck out. That's how insane Swampert is at drawing cards, to be honest, when you get 2 or 3 on board. And this Vulpix is going to really help you out in the early turns, and the Alolan Ninetales also just has a bunch of synergy because you're already playing Aqua Patches, you're already playing DCEs, and its numbers are really good. You hit 190, and the deck doesn't have a GX attack, and it also provides something that you put in the active position that the opponent has to scratch their head and think whether or not they want to even attack it because of that cool GX attack option. And even on top of that, its only little 50 damage spreads can help out the math for Swampert because it's not really a one-hit KO machine unless it's really specific circumstances. So I think the Ninetales is a really nice partner for it. I know everyone just looks at the Magcargo and sees an Omega crazy combo available, but I think your Swamperts just die too quickly with the Magcargo list. So I'm trying to use Ninetales because, you know, if you're beaconing, you're getting End or Guzma, and either way, that's a better outcome than if you weren't using Beacon. And the Ninetales is a very good attacker, which means that your Swamperts are safely on the bench because, unlike with Zoroark, where if they're going to Guzma KO it, they're going to keep up tempo-wise with prizes, they're not going to do the same with Swampert because it's a single prize Pokemon. So think of it as like an Octillery, where the opponent has to have the headache of going almost behind on prizes to do it in the first place, but it's even harder because you have 160 hit points. So Swampert is a really good card in general. Its ability is insane. It's just not good enough to attack on its own, and that's why we're not going to go for Magcargo. We're going to try and squeeze in this thin Ninetales line to make it work. So I do say it's a thin Ninetales line. It really is. It's that 2-1 line that we've seen in Decitails so emphatically, and it is really, really helpful. Although it is that thin line, it does serve a lot in here. We are playing a stretcher as well and puzzles to try and recover this if we need to in the matchup, because Ninetales is a very good card. I've already gushed about Beacon and how very, very important it is for this deck. Ninetales as well, with that Ice Path, Ice Blade, and Blizzard Edge, all very good options in here, and it keeps your Swamperts out of harm's way, which is great. We're going to play 3 Tapu Leles. We're going to try and get into our Brigettes, of course, and we're going to then look for things like Skyla for Candy on turn 2, because you may notice that I'm not playing any Marshtomps. I think you are losing if you're putting Marshtomps into play, to be honest. Especially in the Zoroark era, they will just gust and KO that Marshtomp. There's no way that that's not happening. So, especially when you're sometimes attacking with a lower Ninetales, they're looking for things to Guzma up. And if you just say, hey, I'm a Marshtomp, it's just always going down. There's no second thought there at all. So I'm just not playing Marshtomps. We're all in on the Candy engine. So Leleing for things like Skyla is going to be important. Outside of the Swampert line, the Tapu Koko is the only other card. Flying Flip has great synergy alongside Ninetales because then Ice Blade can do 70 for lower HP bench things like Trubbishes. Additionally, the Blizzard Edge does 190 with a Choice Band, and Flying Flip gets them in range, so things like Zoroark are now very convenient for the Ninetales, and even for Swampert to a certain extent. It means 4 energy Choice Band means Swampert can reach that number as well, so it is a decent attacker, Swampert. It's just that you can't use it throughout the game, and the Ninetales really helps you have a more fluid game plan. Even though these things can get knocked out, it's just much easier for you. So I think that's the safest thing. For those of you who don't know what Swampert does, Power Draw is the ability. Once during a turn, you may discard a card from hand and then draw 3. So it's like Zoroark, but you get a free extra card every time. So effectively, having 2 Swamperts in play is equal to having 3 Zoroarks in play, but you're actually keeping 1 extra card that you're not having to discard. So very, very efficient, very aggressive draw power. If you do have 3 Swamperts in play, you are basically having to stop yourself using Power Draw, otherwise you will deck out a lot of time, but it just gives you insane hand sizes. It's really, really good. Hydro Pump's the attack. For 3 colorless, you do 80, 20 more for each water energy attached to this Pokemon. We are playing Counter Energy, we're playing, what's the, Super Boost Energy as well. We're playing Aqua Patches, we're playing a handful of Waters. We're also playing DCs if we need to do Hydro Pumps for 2-hit KO style approaches, but we can try and ramp into 1 hits at times, but as I said, don't expect to set up like 3 Swamperts throughout a game. Expect to set up the Ninetales and like 1 or 2 Swamperts at most to attack with. Setting up multiple Swamperts to draw is very important, but that's about it really. So 15 Pokemon in total, no Marshtomps. I don't think it's worth it in this current climate really. I'd rather just have an extra supporter. Onto the trainers, it's really interesting how this has developed. From my initial build, I've had to make a lot of cute cuts and things like that. I've had to get cheeky where I can and make the stand that you need to play certain counts of cards. For me, Aqua Patch is never a cut. I think you need to play all 4 copies. Puzzle of Time, honestly, is getting back Aqua Patch a lot in this deck. So 4 Aqua Patch is a must, 4 Puzzle is a must, 4 Candy is a must, 4 Ultra Ball is a must. We can't move on any of those counts in my opinion. It's just too reckless. Aqua Patch, honestly, is such an important card, as is, of course, hitting rare candy to get into your Swamperts in the first place. And then these 2-on-1 counts at the bottom. The 1 Heavy Ball, obviously very good for Swampert. It has a 3 retreat cost, so similar to things like Vikabulu, where we're playing a Skyla engine. You use that Heavy Ball to find a Vikavolt. We're going to do the same here to get a free Swampert out, which is great. Rescue Stretcher, really important, because, as I mentioned earlier, we are actually trying to play Super Boost in this deck. So trying to actually have 3 Swamperts on your board is going to be important if things like Mudkips are getting knocked out early, or your Swampert as well. So Rescue Stretcher, recovering these is going to be important, and of course it's great for your Ninetales or Alolan Vulpix as well. 2 Field Blowers, we are an ability-based deck, and we don't really appreciate Parallel either side of it, to be honest. We are better than just a Swampert Magcargo list against Parallel City, but that doesn't matter too much. Our damage is still hurt, and that's important to get rid of, as well as, of course, Garbodor. 2 Choice Bands, really, really essential for the Ninetales and the Swampert. This, again, is a target that you will sometimes puzzle back when you need to. And 1 copy of Floatstone, I would honestly love more, but there's just not space in a deck like this. Onto supporters, it's a really interesting count that I've ended up going towards. I did not figure out that I would go to this supporter line at first. I initially started with a Zoroark style supporter count, started trimming away the Brigettes, and then moved more towards a Vikabulu supporter count, and then had to go even cheekier to have space for puzzles. So the things that remain are the most important cards that I think that we can play. 2 copies of Brigette alongside 4 Ultra Ball and 3 Lele. I think it gives us better odds than just playing 2 Lele and the 3rd Brigette. Well, it's the same odds, but you'd rather have the flexibility of Lele. 3 copies of N, 3 copies of Guzma, and 4 copies of Skyla, because we are so all in on rare candies. As I've said a lot, because we're going all towards this 1 Super Boost Energy route, because it's so efficient to do a Super Boost Energy attack with a Swampert, you are doing 160 for 1 attachment, and you're getting Choice Band on top of that to do 190 for 1 attachment. That's basically the whole goal for this list. As I figured out, that's probably the best way to try and make Swampert work. Just aim down this line. You get so much draw from 3 Swamperts being in play in the first place that then you can work towards this goal, and then you're hitting 190 for 1 attachment, and it is absolutely game-changing for a non-GX as well. It's really, really good. So having these Skylas in here for those rare candies is just a big deal. So playing that Vikabulu style approach, Skyla can get you Heavy Ball, Skyla gets you Candy, Skyla gets you Choice Band as well, which is actually a really important card. Skyla gets you the other half of a puzzle as well, which is a big deal. So you want to be using Skyla a lot in this deck, not just turn 2, but on future turns as well, to continue building that Swampert army up. So we do use Skyla a lot in this deck. Very, very important card. Choosing to play the 4th copy. I was playing 3 in Marshtomp, but honestly, Marshtomp is just... You're never happy to see him. You'd much rather see a Skyla a lot of the time, trust me. So there you go. Onto the energy, it is a wild energy count, I'm not going to lie. Again, it's one of these things where it started off much more normal. I started off going for more double colorless energies because we're playing Lele's and the Ninetales. Couldn't cut all the DCEs altogether because it is still super synergistic with Ninetales, as I mentioned, and Lele and Koko. Counter energy also helps with Koko. Counter energy is amazing with your Swamperts, of course. But you don't want to be all in on the counter energy approach either, because when you start going ahead or level, things are going to really spiral out of control for you. So I only really like one copy of counter energy. We play the puzzles to recover it if we need to. One super boost, again, it's a big goal that you go for most games, to be honest. When you're motoring through your deck digging, you're digging for more Swamperts, because once you've got 3 on the board, the super boost turn comes and it's a huge swing in the game. So super boost is a great goal to move towards, and it's actually realistic for the first time in a stage 2 deck. So it's really cool to see super boost hopefully working. And anecdotally, post-rotation, when there's not parallel, super boost may be a much better card, so bear that in mind. This is pretty YOLO right now, but it's a really fun thing to move towards. And in the Swampert deck, I think that's one of the first where we can see it really shining. And at the moment, we're only playing 6 waters. It's all I can have space for. I'd love to play 7, 8, or whatever, just to have more fodder for the Swamperts. It's obviously getting them into the discard pile for your Aqua Patch activation, because a lot of the time you want to be manually attaching things like Counter Energy or DCE to your Ninetales, Counter Energy to your Swamperts, stuff like that. But obviously having enough to also attach throughout the game is going to be important for you. So 6 energies total alongside all these specials I think is really funky. And I know it looks hideous on paper to see 2, 1, 1, 6, but they all serve very important roles. And when you play puzzle to a certain extent, the counter energy gets much better. And Super Boost is just such an important card that you can't not play it. So yeah, 10 total energy. Again, this list is jam-packed with tightness. I really tried to build this as streamlined as possible, but you can't get around not playing DCs and stuff like that. So 10 is the energy count we're going to have to sit on. So here is the full list if you want to pause it now and take a screenshot. It's really bizarre that I started the day with a list that was super different to this, so I wouldn't be surprised if you're looking at this like, what has he done? He's gone too far. Has science gone too far this time? Honestly, I'm with you. I'm looking at this list and I'm thinking this is crazy, but when you play with this build, you'll understand the counts a lot more, and you'll see why the Super Boost Prism Star energy is the goal that you should be going towards, because it's, again, just such a big swing turn when that comes off for you. It's what's going to give you wins at the end of the day. So this is why we've gone down this route. It's crazy, it's kooky, and it's a lot of fun to play this list. So yeah, just let me see what you guys think about it. On to tech options. Honestly, there's been a lot of different iterations of this deck. I was playing Nesball Lily because you want to not only have basic Pokemon early, but you also want to have Candy, of course, for turn 2. So there was that approach, but I didn't think there was enough space to also fit in the Ball Search cards. Brocklet Hill is also a one-of that I'd really love to have in, because you're playing a Skyla engine. It gets you basics a lot cheaper, which is nice for you. I actually have got Stretch in the list. There was a point where I didn't. That's why it's on this slide. Something like a Max Potion could be really nice in combination with Ninetales. I was thinking for Zoroark matchups, trying to loop your Ninetales, but with only a 2-1 count doesn't feel great. Also, at the same time, there are turns where people are going to try and hit your Swamperts proactively if you just have like 1 or 2 energies on them on the bench, thanks to Aqua Patches. So just healing and getting out of the way could be a pretty nice option when you're playing puzzles. The thing I've found a lot is that this is not like Zoroark, where you want to play a lot of one-off cards that you get back at the perfect time, because our strategy is much more linear. So we want to be pretty much puzzling back like pieces for more Swamperts and Aqua Patches. That's pretty much all we're looking for from our puzzles of time. Like, if we could play more, we would. So I feel like you don't want to go down the one-off route with like Counter Catcher, E-Hammers, stuff like that. There's just no room for that, and it just clunks up an already stage 2 deck, so bear that in mind. Other supporters that could be cool, Kukui, obviously we're playing the Koko. Kukui can do a similar thing. Cynthia as well, in addition, or instead of a certain number of your Skylas, you can go for Mallow, of course, very good when you have your Swamperts up and running. But my main concern is getting those boys going, because as soon as you got one, the deck starts flowing better. Then the second one comes and you really start motoring through the deck. As I said, 2 Swamperts in play is equivalent draw-wise to 3 Zoroarks. And whenever you have 3 Zoroarks up in play as a Zoroark player, you feel like your job's done. And that's how it feels with Swampert. You're drawing a lot of cards when 2 are in play, so don't really need the Mallow. It's only really good if you've gone, you know, Candy, Swampert, Mallow all in your hand, and that's just already like such a favourable situation. It's much more likely that because we're playing 4 Skylas, we can just go Candy, Swampert, draw with Swampert, and then Skyla for either the Candy or the Ultra Ball for what we need after what we've just drawn for that second Swampert anyway. And it's going to help us out much more at going for turn 2 plays if we currently don't have Candy Swampert in hand, for example. So there you go. In terms of attackers, right now I am slightly worried about Rayquaza because it's a big one-hit KO deck, and it's not going to be easy for us to respond on it very effectively. So something like a Sylveon could be an important one-of. You know how I've just stressed that the deck doesn't like having one-ofs. That's currently why I don't have it in there, but it could be an option if Ray's going to be important enough. Volt Prism Star, as we are trying to spam Aqua Patch as much as possible, is actually a really reasonable card. And similar to why Tapu Koko's in here, you could do 100 damage and do the 20s everywhere as well. My main concern is Koko is a great lead for you because it's effectively like a third Alolan Vulpix that you can get beaconing early. And this Volk is more like having an extra Swampert on your board because you're powering up effectively what you would be powering up a Swampert instead. And I don't feel like it works in that regard, so I think it's a little bit too expensive when you're not playing Max Elixir, although we have seen it shine in Aqua Box as an incredible one-of. And then tending more towards counter energy if you want to be done with DCs altogether, which I wouldn't advise, but you could go more heavily down towards a counter energy route where you're playing things like Sudowoodo for Zoroark to really improve that matchup, and Shaman as well for things like Lycanroc, which is a big one-hit KO machine, which is something you should be concerned about. So these cards are viable, and when I first made a Swampert list, I was thinking about going heavily down the counter energy route, but as I've played it a few more games, I feel like it's not very consistent and not the best idea overall, so you can go for it. I think the Sudowoodo makes more sense if you play Brooklet Hill, by the way, but it would basically be a very different 60 to what I've just shown you, and that's why I've not incorporated just like the one copy of Pseudo. It's too niche right now. Here are some matchups. I think Zoroark's really difficult because most Zoroarks are just very good at punishing your Mudkips and not allowing you to get the third Swampert going, especially because Lycanroc, Golisopod, they can get one-hit KOs. The Weavile deck as well obviously can, because of the amount of abilities that are on your board. Zorogarb obviously can be an issue alongside other Garbodor variants. I should have put Gliscod Garb as a horrible matchup because that's almost unwinnable. Buzzgarb also going to be difficult. Like basically any Garb, because you just have to hope that you can, well, if you can Skyla into Field Blower and then get your Swamperts going, that's going to be a really good situation for you. But other than that, it's going to be very difficult. And the Zoroark stuff can just prey on any slow start that you have, really. So you really are incentivized to go fast. Greninja is going to be difficult for you, even though you have Ninetales, which is a big pain for it. We don't have a way of knocking out Greninja breaks very efficiently, because it's going to be difficult for you to get that many Swamperts on the board when you don't have their abilities rolling for you. So again, the emphasis is on going quite quickly with your Swamperts to try and overcome these sorts of awkward matchups. Rayquaza GX, going to be difficult no matter what, and Zoro Shiftry as well, similar to Zoro Pod, just going to be very difficult to get over that big Shiftry. 240 hit points is way out of reach for this Swampert deck, so you're going to have to try and two-shot that and do your best against it as it starts beating through your board quite effectively. So I don't think this is tier 1, but I think it's definitely a fun deck, and it's been really cool to try and navigate around the Swampert list and make it work, because it's turned into quite an interesting build, I think. Here are my closing thoughts. The deck is fragile until Swampert gets on the board, but as soon as it does, the deck starts to flow a lot nicer. That's why you've incorporated this Vikabulu engine, I guess you could call it, supporter-wise at the very least. The deck doesn't like O-Hit KO, and it doesn't like ability lock, so it is a lot weaker than Zoroark. I would not be confident taking this to Worlds, even though it is a lot of fun. And Ninetales, in my opinion, is a much safer partner than Magcargo. You're really all in if you play the Magcargo builds, because you basically need to already guarantee yourself a way into Swampert, and then Magcargo, and then it's like slightly better than the Ninetales, but having the Vulpix just solves so many issues for you, because you can get that beacon off. even just doing Beacon and it gets KO'd is so good for you, because then another Mudkip stayed on your board. Whereas if you're playing the Magcargo list, you're not happy if a Slugma gets knocked out or a Mudkip. Like, neither of those situations are good for you because you're losing an integral part of the deck. So this just feels a lot safer, even though it is a lot less cool to stack the deck and then draw into a bunch. But this feels like optimistically the best chance of working. So let me know what you guys think of Swampert. It is very cool, very fun to build around and make work to the best of my ability. Let me know how you've built it and how different it is. Have you gone down towards the Super Boost Energy routes? It wasn't one that initially came to me, but then after playing a few games, I was like, man, we really need a big swing turn because it's really difficult to power up a bunch of Swamperts. And this is a great solution to that. So yeah, more of a fun one today. I'm still working on Beast Box. That's why I've done this one just as a placeholder, really. But there'll be the Beast Box ones to come as well. So plenty more decks for Celestial Storm to come. Hopefully I'll be getting my boxes soon, and we'll be getting the codes and starting to do online videos. But for now, hope you guys enjoyed. It's been Joe from OmniPoke, and I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.